All right, boomer narcissist parents. Yeah, this is like a big problem that a lot of us are dealing with and will be dealing with probably for the next 30 years. And I think collectively we can figure out how to solve this problem for ourselves. And I tell you what, I am actively trying to figure this out and I'm actively navigating it. And, you know, you try to wrap your head around, it's like, what's going on with these people? Because the general perception and the general encounters I have with boomers is they're inconvenienced. They're inconvenienced by my presence. They're inconvenienced by my children's presence, and they really just want to just go on their own path and ignore everyone else around them. That's just my general observation. And a lot of my friends, myself included, parents are baby boomers. They kind of behave that way, and they're raging narcissists. And I did a video earlier talking about it's society to blame for an entire generation of narcissists. And it's interesting because everyone says, "Oh, the millennials." So I'm a millennial. The millennials are they're the most entitled generation in history. The millennials are the most entitled. And I completely disagree with that because I'm a millennial and I'm not entitled. I work my ass off to support myself and my family. And my feeling is it's the baby boomers who are the most entitled generation. And a lot of them, they don't really understand what the rest of us are dealing with because, they grew up in a time when they were making momentum and building their lives. When they were children, the world was your oyster. It was a safe place to be. The streets were paved in gold. You could be out at night. You could go to the ball field, go to the ball game. You could go to the soda shop. There were kids everywhere. You could kind of just do whatever you wanted. And things were cheap. And there were kids everywhere. And then, you get to a point where you're getting older and you want to enter the job force. You go to school. Oh, college is like, my buddy who's a boomer went to Stanford. It was like $8,000, And then, you want to get into the job force. Just boom, here's an entire industry that's ready for you. You literally just have to do is just show up. And then, you want to drop a grand in the stock market? Yeah, now you're a multi-millionaire. You want to buy a home, for $10,000? Yeah, now that home is worth millions of dollars. And that, in my opinion, has led to the situation we are in. These people are the most entitled people in history. Everything was set up for them. Everything is so easy for them. So it's definitely going to lead to a sense of entitlement. They've made so much money. They've made the most money of any generation in modern history. It's trillions of dollars that they've amassed, which is amazing. But now, as a millennial and Gen Xers out there, now we're faced with the fallout of this generation retiring in like droves. Mass amounts of these people are retiring. And like where I live, the entire city is dedicated for the boomers' retirement. It's medical places everywhere. It's like a whole side of the town is just medical facility. And it's like 100,000 people where I live. And what's happened is because of all these medical facilities, baby boomers from all over have moved in, and the home prices have shot up. It's like $500,000 is the average home price. So, being a millennial and having a family, owning a business, all these things, there's a lot of pressures that get put on us. And on top of that, as your parents begin to age, you want to be there for them and support them. And a statistic I was reading about the likelihood of baby boomers experiencing financial hardship from health-related issues, it's like 70%. It's a really high number. So even if you don't have a narcissistic baby boomer parent, but you just have a baby boomer parent in general, the likelihood of them experience a health catastrophe is really high. And if you look at just health statistics in general, the baby boomers are extremely unhealthy. And, obviously it's lifestyle and whatnot to blame. But add in, you're dealing with a narcissistic baby boomer and they're your parent. That's the triple whammy. And I'm dealing with that, and I'm sure you're dealing with that because you clicked on this video. And it's a huge problem. And what we need to do collectively is figure out, number one, I grew up as a scapegoat in a narcissistic family environment. And all throughout my life, I have been incredibly empathetic. That is a quality of mine that I appreciate and I embrace, and it is who I am. I want to be empathetic. I like that feeling. And so even though I have a raging narc mother who's actively tried to destroy my life, there is a sense of empathy for her, and I do want her to have a quality of life as she grows old. And so it's important to still maintain, because most likely if you've experienced narcissistic abuse, you have a great deal of empathy because you understand feelings, you understand emotions, you have a deep sense of feeling and emotion. So that would naturally lead to, you being empathetic. And it's okay to be empathetic and care for your parent, even though they're a POS. And it's okay. They don't need to completely fill you with hate and make you stop caring for them, because it's your choice. You can decide. And if you just want to tell them to fuck off and be done with them, and if they experience health problems and have no money and are homeless and you're just like whatever, that's fine too. That's your choice. But for a lot of us, I think we're grappling the decision of, okay, how do we navigate this situation? Because this is going to be happening for the next 30 years. They're kind of retiring in groupings of, it's like thirds. There's an older, there's a middle, and there's a younger. And so I think the younger baby boomers are beginning to retire. But a lot of them aren't, man. Like my dad's went back to work. And so that has prolonged, their period of non-retirement, which I don't know if it was good or if it was bad, but I think he's just in a situation where the environment, because he's an enabler and kind of narcissistic himself, but I think he just wanted to get out of the house because the narcs just, their living scene it's not good. It's really toxic. So he probably just went back to work so he could get out of that scene. But, okay, so as sons and daughters dealing with narcissistic boomer parents who are aging out, and, you want to provide them with the care and as best your ability. And this is if you're like, you want to participate and do something. So one thing I did was we decided to move in. We decided to share the property with my parents. This is before I knew about narcissism, and I've told the story a lot of times. But we made a decision, my wife and I, was to invest our savings into, they had a cottage on their property. And we made the decision to invest our savings and turn it into a house. It was just a one-room shack with a bathroom. But we remodeled it and turned it into a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home. And it's really nice, and that's where we live. And the idea was, we'll move in there and fix the place up and then live there for a few years. We'll save some money because we're paying rent, but it's like half of what normal rent is. Like normal rent where I live is like $2,000. So we'll save some money and we'll be close to my family. This is before we knew that my mom was a raging narc. But eventually we figured it out because once you get real close to them and they have access to you 24/7, that's when it really heats up. So anyway, we figured that out. But anyway, with fixing up the guest house, we're like, they can use that in their retirement years if they're running low on money. They can put someone in there, rent it out. They could get $1,500, $2,000 a month for that, or they could put a caregiver in there because I don't want to have to be their caregiver. And I have a golden child brother who's just kind of a potato, and I don't think he's going to want to actively be their caregiver either. And the situation is, you're going to have to pay for a caregiver for your parents if you don't want to have to do that. And the cost for caregivers is high. And that job is in huge demand right now. If you want to step into a job that's in huge demand, my friend just did this. She did it a couple years ago. And the licensing and the requirements to like be a registered caregiver are pretty minimal, and she is killing it, man. The saddest part though is she like meets these people and you form a bond with them and then they die. So that's the hardest part. But anyway, if you're faced with like I don't want to be the caregiver for my parents and I don't want to have to pay for that, this is like what we did. We invested $30,000. We're saving money on rent. We'll probably get half our investment back, but whatever. But they can move a caregiver in there, and then, they could like pay zero rent and maybe a few $100 a month. But it would drastically lower the cost of caregiving for them, and then it would enable me and my family to just do the slow fade and get out of there. And as they age out, like I'm not having to be so hands-on and deal with them. So that's one thing that I've managed to do. The other thing is, we have to develop ideas and frameworks of how to interact with these people. And my wife and I have been working diligently at this because we have to interact with them, not regularly, but sometimes. And the thing with the narcs is they're constantly fishing and prying and coming at you for supply and energy. And so you really have to be on guard and diligent in protecting yourself and your family and your emotions. And so, we've developed the monster method. I call it, it's like the Gray Rock Ninja on steroids. That's kind of the thing. I have other videos on it. Check it out. I did one the other day. That's really helped us. And, you kind of have to approach it from the type of narcissist that you're dealing with, because they're all going to be slightly different and your relationship dynamic is going to be different. And so you really just have to keep in mind of, remembering who these people are and ultimately what they want from you. And their ultimate goal, is they'd rather see you compromised and in a weakened state rather than energized and strong. So if you just kind of, have that mindset going into that, you'll be able to figure out a way that you can protect yourself and your family. Because especially like the long haul, my folks are in their 70s right now, and I don't know. I mean, they've, their lifestyles, I don't know. They're not overweight or anything, and I don't know. Their diets are pretty good. They're not very active, but who knows? They could have 10 more years. They could have 20 more years. They could have 30 more years, and so you could be in it for the long haul. And several of my friends have become millionaires from their boomer parents dying and them inheriting a big chunk of change from them. And not to say that that should be the reason why you stick around, for some big inheritance. I mean, it's not the case. That's not happening with my folks. Not at all. I'm foreseeing, hopefully this cottage thing works out. We can put a caregiver in there, but I don't know if they'll be able to afford to stay where they're living, just because they tend to live above their, they tend to live outside of their means. They don't bring in enough to cover their lifestyle. So most likely, it's going to be a situation where you will have to deal with them more often as they get older, or manage their care for them. And, as they age out and as their health declines and all these different things, I think, the narcissism and the abuse and everything is just going to be even worse, because they're going to have less of an ability to control their emotions, because they already don't really have an ability to feel and understand empathy. And as they get older and experience more pain and just discomfort, it's just going to be even worse. So, you know, if you if you can go no contact and peace out, man, good for you. Then I would say do it, because you don't owe these people anything. That's an important thing to remember. But if you're in a situation where you do have to stay in proximity to them, and you want to, because we do have that longing, for the loss of what we could have had with these people. I could have had a good relationship with my dad. I could have had a good relationship with my mom if she wasn't, crazy. And it's, you hold on to that, and that's kind of like what is fueling you to consider, like, I'll pick up the phone when they call or something like that. But you really just have to stay on guard at all times, especially if the with like my folks, the narcissist, as long as she's in the picture, we're always going to have to be on guard. If she goes and it's my enabler dad, he's pretty mellow. Like, he's really not that angry, kind of a mean person. He's been beaten down his entire life by his narcissistic father, and then multiple narcissistic women, and then eventually landing with my narc mom, who's just like completely just he is beaten down, man. It's really sad. So I think he'll be fine, and we won't have to worry about him going too crazy on the family. So, these are some strategies that I'm working on. And, my whole thing with the videos is documenting this and sharing and learning. And I'm really open to new ideas. And, if we figure something out, like, I'm quick to share it. Because we have to navigate this thing, man, because there are so many boomers. They're the largest generation in modern history. They're everywhere. Everywhere I go, there are so many boomers. They're just everywhere. And the fallout from their retirement and aging is going to be huge, man. It's going to leave a huge, void in the world. And the key for us moving through this is maintaining. We have to maintain our sanity, because the boomer narc parents are only going to start raging even harder as they get older. Because like my parents, man, they will not accept the fact that they're old. They're convinced, I don't know, they're like 40 or 50. I have no idea. I mean, 10 years ago, I was telling them, listen, we need to start setting money aside, that you guys can have as like savings. You put it into a Roth IRA, or just put it in an account and start saving, whatever it may be, or even just sit on savings, and I was really encouraging them to do that while they had some extra money and they weren't so tight. And they didn't want to hear it. They were like, what are you even talking about? I'm going to build a new fence. I'm going to, buy some crap. And I was like, okay, whatever, man. You guys decide. So yeah, this is only going to get worse. And they kind of are going kicking and screaming into old age. I don't think a lot of them are choosing to age gracefully, and it, it's too bad, because they could really be the ones that aren't, demons and insane, could really be good, positive people, and they could be a good elderly influence for a lot of, millennials and Gen Xers and the Gen Zers and all the young people that are trying to come up and do what the boomers did, because that's the blueprint. That we're following the blueprint that the baby boomers created of how to have upward mobility in life. And that's a blueprint we're following, but that blueprint is not working, unfortunately. And so we're having to kind of figure it out on the fly. And now we're dealing with baby boomer narcissistic parents and them not wanting to get old. So anyway, if you come up with some ideas, let me know, because I'm happy to share them. And, as new things come up and I figure out what the hell I'm doing, I'll let you know. So anyway, I appreciate your time and enjoy the rest of your day.